Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Suits and Laterals podcast. I am Jeff Rich. I'm joined by Chris Green, and what can I tell you? We didn't think the Cleveland Browns could find a new way to lose, and they did it again, Chris. Chris, I mean, don't you just have to laugh at this? I don't care how much of a diehard you are. You almost have to laugh because it's almost like it's scripted to be this bad for the Cleveland football Browns.
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that, Jeff, because I was watching the end of the game last night. I was on the phone with my wife, and as soon as that play happened, I just started laughing hysterically. And she's like, "What?" And I told her what happened. It's like, at this point, all I can do is laugh. There's just nothing else to do at this point.
I mean, did you see the video of the kids trying to take the video of the game-winning field goal? And then the dejected look on their faces as they walked out. It's I've got it embedded in my column at morethanafan.net about how the Browns broke me, but it's just entertaining. I'm kind of laughing with everyone. You know how when everybody laughed at you, your parents always told you, well, they're not laughing at you, they're laughing with you. I am finally laughing with everyone else. I'm heartbroken, and I'm upset, and I'm hungry for something better with the Cleveland Browns. Sure. But at the same time, you got to go with the flow sometimes.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it's just, at some point, it's just so bad, there's nowhere to go but laugh.
That's true. So, to reset it, Monday Night Football, game tied at 27 at First Energy Stadium in Cleveland. Travis Coons, who had previously not missed a field goal in his first 18 attempts, which is an NFL record, lines up for the field goal, and the Ravens get their hands on it. They block it at low trajectory. Will Hill, not the decent cornerback, probably not the poster boy for dental hygienics, sidesteps down the sidelines. And, it's basically a walk-off win. They had to line up for the extra point. And Matt Schaub, not in the Houston Texans, Matt Schaub and the Baltimore Ravens come away with the victory to go to 4-7. They dropped the Browns to 2-9. And there are some seats getting very, very hot in Cleveland.
Well, I got to ask, though, has there ever been a quarterback that's perfected the art of the interception return for a touchdown as much as Matt Schaub?
I couldn't believe it. What, 4 games in a row, or was Monday Night 5? I mean, that's just. That's on the quarter. That's definitely on the quarterback. I realize that there are certain returns that you can't do anything about, where the blockers just get in front of you, and short of the quarterback getting decapitated in an effort to make a stop, they're going to happen. But you throw the ball into the flat, or you throw the ball to the opposite side of the field where you've got no help when the ball does get picked off. I mean, that's kind of on Schaub, and that's why he's not a Houston Texan anymore, right?
Or an Oakland Raider, or whoever else he's been with. But yeah, exactly. At one time, he was a very good quarterback, a Pro Bowl quarterback, and then he fell off the wagon or got hit by the train, whatever analogy you want to throw at it. But the guy just throws more interceptions for touchdowns than he throws actual touchdown passes.
It's true. But seems like as bad as Baltimore is, and obviously getting to 4-7 helps. Yeah, you're a 3-win team with 5 games left. You're going to be drafting high. I know the Baltimore. I know that Steve Bisciotti and Ozzie Newsome have all the confidence in the world, and John Harbaugh staying put. They're going to have their starting quarterback back for the beginning of the 2016 season, so they're not in dire straits by any stretch of the imagination. They need to ramp up that defense. They need to add some weapons, but they have a decent foundation. They've been able to win before. They've been able to build it back up before, and I have to turn in my Browns card for saying this, but I have all the confidence in the world that Baltimore doesn't have any problems with the Ravens going forward.
Well, they do have 2 more championships than the Browns have. Super Bowl championships, let me amend that.
Yeah, those did happen. So John Harbaugh staying put. Cleveland, just surrounded by drama. You have Johnny Manziel named the starting quarterback. Gets basically fired on his day off during his bye week. And, everybody's pointing fingers at Mike Pettin. But, we talked about accountability with Johnny Manziel, but there are a number of other things going on with the Browns organization. I think it starts at the very, very top with the owner, Jimmy Haslam. But are you anticipating a full house cleaning come Black Monday in January?
I think there'll definitely be some sort of cleaning. I don't know what it'll be, but I mean, these days, I'll be honest, it's been this way pretty much since 1999. If you look in the dictionary under dysfunction, there's a picture of the Cleveland Browns logo on there. So it's hard for me to say that as a fan. I know it's hard for a lot of people to hear that, but it seems like it's sinking in more and more to people, and it seems like even more so after last night. It just seems to be coming to fruition. Now, a lot of people are obviously emotional after those kind of events happen and those kind of a finish, but at what point is enough enough?
Well, there's only one other 2-9 team in the league, and they've already fired their coach. That's the Tennessee Titans. Ken Wisenhunt out in Tennessee. Malarkey is in on an interim basis, but they're probably going to look to go in a number of different directions, put out some feelers, and see what they could do. I mean, it's a more attractive job just because of Marcus Mariota at this point, isn't it, than Cleveland is?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's any question that it's a more attractive job at this point. So, I mean, you have the unstable quarterback situation, which we know it's in the 20s and counting is how many starters have been there since '99.
Did you see that stat that since John Harbaugh has been coaching the Ravens, and it's 26 games total, that the Browns have started 15 different quarterbacks in those 26 games? That's just amazing. That's remarkable.
It's sad. It's remarkable. It's amazing. I mean, there's so many adjectives you can use for that.
Okay, so getting away from the Browns, another team that's already fired their coach. They bring in Dan Campbell. He provides a little spark. The Dolphins have come back down to earth. Dolphins looking for a new head coach. Got to be an attractive situation. Probably even more so than what you have with Mariota in Nashville, that you do have Ryan Tannehill, and you have a Dolphins team that doesn't seem to be too far away. I mean, I think they're a little disappointing this year. You put them in the playoffs, probably in the preseason, at least in the wild card in the AFC. Philbin doesn't get it done, so you take away Aaron Rodgers from the offensive mind of Joe Philbin, and you're left with a coach that that doesn't stay very long. Dan Campbell, not the guy to get it done. I mean, I would almost think that the ink's got to almost be on the contract already to bring Chicago Bears offensive coordinator Adam Gase, who's been mentioned for head coaching jobs for about 3 years now, that he finally jumps at the opportunity. He says, hey, this is what I've done with Jay Cutler. I could probably do this with Ryan Tannehill, and I really think that Adam Gase is the next head coach of the Miami Dolphins.
It's possible. I mean, it's kind of funny. We're talking about dysfunction. Look at what the Dolphins have done. They fired their head coach this year. They fired their defensive coordinator, and now yesterday they fired their offensive coordinator. There's not many people left to fire at this point that weren't there at the beginning of the season.
No, and I think that it's just a slow, staggering process until it's just because you can get rid of all the guys you want, but you got to have people that can backfill those positions or at least fake it. And I think that the Dolphins just got to the point where they were just tired on both sides of the ball. They were tired of the leadership, and they need a change. They need an attitude change there in Miami more than personnel changes. They need somebody that can corral in Ndamukong Suh. I mean, he basically says that we need players that can play with me, which really says the whole tale. It just tells the two sides of the coin between Ndamukong Suh on the field, and Ndamukong Suh, the gentle big teddy bear that he is off the field with charities and everything like that. But he can't be. It seems like he can't be coached in a way. I mean, Schwartz couldn't do it. Caldwell had problems. I mean, he was just, and he gets to Miami, and Philbin can't corral him in. I mean, he should be a little bit of a wild child, given what he does for a living. But at some point, Ndamukong Suh's got to play to win and not play to be Ndamukong Suh.
Well, you would think. I mean, I guess it just depends on what's most important to him at the end of the day. Is it all about the dollars, or is it about winning football? And, I mean, to this point, can you really argue it's been about the dollars? Because he doesn't seem to care about the winning portion of it since he hasn't changed his antics since he's been in the league.
Right, and moving through the league over to the AFC South, you have the Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans tied for first place at 6-5. disappointing season for Indianapolis, maybe a partially disappointing season for the Houston Texans. Pagano's contract is up, as you told me before the show. How do you think they're doing? I mean, can they do better than Chuck Pagano? Can they get somebody in there that's better to work with Andrew Luck, that's better to architect a defense that is going to have to put up with Blake Bortles, Marcus Mariota, and eventually Houston will figure it out at quarterback.
Oh, well, I'll be honest. I think their dream scenario is the guy that's coaching up at Michigan right now. I think they'd love to get Jim Harbaugh down there and have him repair him with Andrew Luck again and see what he could do with that team. I mean, the team's got a lot of talent. I said before the season that Indianapolis's defense was going to be what dictated how far they went, and I mean their defense this year has been mediocre, but their offense has really struggled. I mean, you've had Luck hurt most of the season, and when he was actually playing, he didn't play very well at all. It's kind of funny that they've actually had this little bit of resurgence with, was he 41-year-old Matt Hasselbeck at quarterback?
Yeah, it's funny how it's that whole Bill Simmons Ewing theory. You take the superstar off the team and see how little they regress or how much they improve. And I don't think that tells. I don't think it's fair to Andrew Luck. It's just the results are what they are at this point. Hey, you talked about reuniting Luck with his college football coach and Jim Harbaugh. We've talked about this before, but where do you sit with it now? Tennessee at 2-9, the Philadelphia Eagles at 4-7. Do you see Tennessee maybe pursuing a trade for Chip Kelly to pair Mariota up with his college coach?
I don't even know if they'll have to do a trade at this point. I mean, the way Philadelphia is going, they may say, hey, we're done with the Chip Kelly experiment. He may be a free agent. But I could definitely see that as a scenario. But, I mean, if you're Tennessee and you're trying to move forward, do you want to take that risk with a guy who hasn't had a ton of success in the NFL?
Yeah, speaking of a ton of success, or lack of a ton of success anyway, the San Diego Chargers sit at 3-8. Everything about next year screams new beginning. I mean, you don't know if Rivers is going to stick around. They're having an awful season. Do you want to go into a new city or a new stadium with Mike McCoy, who just hasn't been able to get it done? I mean, San Diego gets to, the Chargers people get disappointed when they finish 7-9, 8-8. They have a 5-11 season. It's going to allow them to go get one of those quarterbacks, whether it's Jared Goff or Connor Cook or Paxton Lynch out of Memphis. I see all new beginnings. I think that McCoy finishes the season, but I see San Diego definitely going in a different direction after the season, maybe gearing their offense a little more towards Melvin Gordon and away from the alpha that Phillip Rivers has been.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It could go either way at this point. I mean, McCoy hasn't had a ton of success, obviously, and this year's definitely been a down year. They've been in most of their games. It's once again been their defense that's kind of killed them. So, I mean, it's not like Phillip Rivers has played terrible. I think he's actually had a pretty decent season, and
he's got a pretty healthy contract. I think that if a team is desperate for a quarterback and they are out there, that they'll move first round picks to make the and do something to make the money work. But Phillip Rivers got a heavy contract, but it's not exactly an albatross. It's not exactly anchoring him down there in Southern California.
Yeah, exactly. So
the guy's got 8. The guy's got 8 kids, so wherever he goes, he's going to stay.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it could be a season of change. It could be a little bit more of the same. But like you said, if they end up moving to LA, I think all bets are off.
All right, moving over to the NFC. You said that Chip Kelly and the Philadelphia Eagles stars don't just do not seem to align for that organization and the antics that Chip Kelly brings.
Yeah, I mean, they had that power struggle, and he got total control of personnel this year. So at some point, it's not just the play on the field that's coming into it. Now you're looking at personnel. So, I mean, that's two facets that are kind of going against him this year. I mean, they went out there, they made the trade for Bradford, trading Nick Foles. I mean, Foles hasn't exactly lit the world on fire with St. Louis, but, I mean, Bradford, as I talked about earlier this year, the biggest thing would be, would he survive the season? And obviously he has not. And when he did play, he wasn't that great either. He was average to below average most of the time. So, I could definitely see a change there. It's possible they could give him another year too. So that's another situation going either way. But I'm kind of thinking that it may be best for both parties to kind of part ways.
Chris, it's funny. I was kind of going through these, through the teams in the NFC, trying to figure out who's on the hot seat, who's safe, and you start at the top of the NFC where the Giants are 5-6, and Tom Coughlin's always on the hot seat. We haven't heard a lot about it, so they're probably not going to win the Super Bowl this year. Then you look down, the Redskins were an unmitigated disaster coming into the season. They've salvaged it a little bit. They're 5-6. Jay Gruden, I think, finally has the Bob G3 thing out of the way. He's going with Kirk Cousins, who's not an all-pro guy by any stretch of the imagination. But here they sit at 5-6. I mean, is there any way it falls apart to the point where Jay Gruden doesn't have a job at the end of the year, or has Washington done enough already?
I think it depends what's going to happen in these last 5 games. I mean, the fact that they're starting to play better. I mean, they're 3-2 in their last 5 games, so it looks like they may have turned the corner. That will kind of determine his future. I mean, he was definitely one of the people we talked about at the beginning of the year. We weren't sure if he'd even last this year. I mean, there was talk last year. We weren't even sure if he'd get to this year. So if they keep going the way they are, I think there's definitely a good chance he'll be back next year.
Jerry Jones once fired Tom Landry. And I watch Jason Garrett year after year. Sometimes he's got Tony Romo, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes they finish above average, and sometimes they finish right at 500. But what would it take? I mean, is it almost like he regrets firing Landry to the point where he's going to be loyal till the very end, and he's the owner of the team, so it never ends, with Jason Garrett as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, I think Garrett's got a little bit of an out this year because of the injury issues with Romo and Des Bryant. So, I mean, that's part of that equation that we aren't really getting into. So that's something that's going to help him. I mean, Jerry Jones has bent over backwards to protect Garrett, like you said, showing the loyalty factor. But a lot of the issues, too, have always been on the personnel side, which isn't Garrett. That's Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones that are controlling that side of the ball. So if they really want to look in a mirror about what's going on, they only have themselves to blame.
All right. Minnesota looks fine with Zimmer. Chicago's not going to do anything with Fox after 1 year. Looks like they're cleaning house in Detroit. They did not name Jim Bob Cooter their interim head coach, and I had no reason to say that other than say Jim Bob Cooter over and over again.
You just love that name.
It kind of works. But Detroit, what's their future? I mean, is Matthew Stafford long for Detroit? What are they building on there? They don't have Sue anymore. They don't have Nick Fairley. It seems like Stafford and Johnson have hit critical mass. Like they can't do anything more for that team. Where do you fix the Detroit Lions? What direction do you go?
I would, unless they continue their sort of resurgence the last 3 weeks, I don't think Jim Caldwell will be back. But if they continue to play like they have the last 3 weeks, then he'll probably still be there next year. But it'll depend on who they bring in as a president and new general manager and all that. I mean, that's always one of those adages you want to let the GM pick the coach type thing. But we'll see. But I mean, I've watched them the last couple weeks, and they have definitely looked like an entirely different team than they did early on this season.
Do they look like the playoff team that they were a year ago?
Much closer to that. I would say this week was the best I've seen them play in a while. I would even say that they played pretty well last week as well. So they're definitely trending upward.
All right. So Jim Caldwell, this is his second year in Detroit?
Yeah, second year.
Okay, so he makes the playoffs 1 year and sets the bar pretty high for himself. And now there's football people in Detroit, and that are going to make decisions, and it's probably going to leave Jim Caldwell on the outside looking. I think that he's going to be a prime candidate for other head coaching jobs if the Lions do let him go.
Well, I mean, it could be, but you've also heard, Peyton Manning made him. I mean, if he wasn't for Peyton Manning and Tony Dungy, he wouldn't be anything in this league. So,
but he got Matthew Stafford to the playoffs. So, I know that's happened before, but
yep.
It's I don't know. When you're working with the Detroit Lions, I think that and they're 4-7 because they've scrape their way back to 4-7. But,
Exactly.
it's not like they're a 1-9 football team at this point. So, like I said, I think that Caldwell's out. And I think that he'll be in somewhere else a year from now. Going through the NFC South, I think really nothing to speak on there. Rivera, 11-0, is doing a great job. Dan Quinn got off to a fast start with Kyle Shanahan down there in Atlanta. It's kind of fallen off, but they're still in the hunt there. Lovie Smith, year 2, gets Jameis Winston, gets him into a rhythm. They've got a lot of offensive weapons there. That looks like it's going pretty well. And then you have the Saints, who just haven't been able to get it together the last couple of years. Sean Payton has the option to leave at the end of the year. I've talked to Saints fans who believe he'll exercise it and believe he'll take Drew Brees with him. What do you think of the future of the Saints and, probably more specifically Sean Payton?
I think there's a better than 50-50 chance that he'll be gone next year. Whether or not he takes Drew Brees, I don't know. I mean, Drew Brees he's at the age now he needs to be, I think, in a similar environment, whether it's a warm weather city or another dome city, just because the age is starting to catch up with him. So I think there's definitely a good chance Peyton leaves, and I think it's 50-50 that Brees goes anywhere because he's a hero down there.
Exactly. I think that's tough because he just married himself to New Orleans and free agent. And to be fair, it was because a lot of it was because Miami and San Diego didn't want him, and he just found a perfect opportunity. Sean Payton picks him up from the airport, drives him through a worse for the wear neighborhood in New Orleans, and he says, "This is where I'm supposed to be." So we'll see how much of that holds true as we approach the offseason. Looking at the NFC West, Jim Tomsula was just a bad idea from the get-go. San Francisco's 3-8 record reflects it. Jed York's got to figure something out there. Who knows what it is? It looks like he's burnt a lot of bridges with his, with former contacts. And then you got St. Louis, and Jeff Fisher is just the most forgiven coach in the history of the NFL. That's why he was in Tennessee for so long. That's why he's been in St. Louis for as long as he is. Is there anything that they've traded for quarterbacks? They've got a great defense. They've got a top 5 rusher in Todd Gurley, and it equals 4-7 in the standings. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know that he had that longevity in Tennessee and Houston, but he also had a much better record there. I mean, it wasn't like anything spectacular, but he was over 500 most of the years. Where I don't even think he's been over 500 since he's been with St. Louis. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think he's going to last another year. I just think the same situation. If they're going to be moving to LA, I think they're going to look for a fresh start. They're going to try to get some sort of name or something going for him with the head coach and try to drum up some excitement. And also, we talked about it last week with the concussion deal with Case Keenum. Somebody's got to pay the price for that one. I think he may end up being the one.
All right, so his Rams host the 9-2 Arizona Cardinals. One of those 2 losses the Cardinals suffered was at home to the St. Louis Rams a little earlier in the season. All they could do at this point is play the role of spoiler. Arians takes Carson Palmer and an offense that's still in the middle of their groove into the dome in St. Louis. Any problems for the Cardinals in this one?
I'm a little bit worried about the Cardinals. They lose Chris Johnson to a broken tibia, and then they lose Ellington as well to injury. So I'm a little bit concerned about their run game. I mean, their offense has been so terrific this year. How much can you put on Carson Palmer's shoulders? I mean, if there's no running game to back him up, I'd be a little bit concerned about that.
I think David Johnson, the rookie out of Northern Iowa, can supplement the running game. It's going to be his time to shine. He hasn't carried the ball a lot this year, and I think he's got less than 150 yards on the ground, and he's proven himself to be a weapon both in the passing game and with kickoff returns. So I think the Cardinals take care of business there. There was a game I was looking at, game of the week. Minnesota hosting the 6-5 Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks need the Cardinals to lose, or they're going to have to go on the road in the playoffs. But are these 2 of the better teams in the NFC?
Well, Seattle's been very up and down this year. I'd say they've underachieved. I mean, they lost Jimmy Graham this week in that big win over the Steelers, so I think that's going to affect them some. So I'll be curious to see how the offense looks. I mean, the defense seems to be, it's not as good as it has been. It's still a pretty good defense, but it's definitely not the defense that we've been expecting to see from Seattle the last couple of years. So I think that'll play into it. They are 4-1 in their last 5, so they're definitely starting to peak at the right time. It's just a matter of, can they sneak into that wild card spot there? I mean, there's a lot of teams that are battling for those 2 wild card slots right now, and I think as of right now, they're on the outside looking in.
Yeah. Speaking of the wild card, Houston and Buffalo do battle in Buffalo at 1 o'clock on Eastern time on Sunday. 2 teams going in different directions. Looks like Houston's definitely on their way up, regardless of who plays quarterback. And the Buffalo Bills seem to have their answer at quarterback, but it's not translating into much more than a 5-6 record.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, LaShawn McCoy hasn't been the big impact player I don't think they were expecting that they got from Philadelphia. So that's kind of hurt them some. Their defense definitely has not been as good as it has been the last couple of years, which is kind of funny since you got Rex Ryan in there coaching now. You would think they would have improved, not regressed. But the offense has definitely improved on the passing game. It just needs to sustain that and be able to stop somebody on the other side of the field.
Rex Ryan's former team, the New York Jets, do not have very far to travel. They will take on the Giants in a road game. Big game for both teams. I mean, the Jets, after the hot start, they've come down to earth a little bit. The Giants, after the slow start, haven't put their foot on the gas just yet. And they find themselves at 6-5, 5-6. Going into this contest on Sunday. What do you look for there?
Well, this game's definitely a toss-up. I mean, they're both teams are battling for their playoff lives. If this was a Super Bowl year for the Giants, this is kind of when they would kick it into gear and go on a winning streak and sweep the month of December. So that should tell us a lot about where this team is going.
All right, battle in the AFC West between the Kansas City Chiefs at 6-5. They go into the black hole and visit the upstart Raiders at 5-6. What do you look for there, Chris?
Well, the Raiders are an interesting team. They have a lot of good things going on for them with some of these younger players with Derek Carr and Amari Cooper, and they're really just making some really good offensive plays. Jack Del Rio's really infused some energy in that building, and they're definitely one of the more up-and-coming teams. So I think they're trying to squeak out a way to get into that wild card discussion. They're kind of on the outside right now. So I think it's a big game, though. I'm sorry, who was the team they're playing? I missed that part.
The Raiders are playing the Chiefs.
The Chiefs. And this is always, the Raiders-Chiefs is always, too. That's a huge grudge game for both teams. I mean, the Chiefs have been playing really well. I know you've been kind of trumpeting them, saying, this team underachieved early, but they're really doing well now. I mean, they're 5-0 in their last 5 games. I didn't think they'd be able to sustain it without Jamal Charles. But
they ran into a tough schedule early, too, and they had the mishap against Denver where they gave up 14 points in a minute. So, I mean, they're a little bit better than their record is.
Yeah, they are. Like I said, I still don't buy into the Alex Smith thing, but you know what? It's hard to argue with them against them the way they're playing right now.
All right, we're gonna skip Hasselbeck v. Landry Jones in the Sunday night football game. Can you flex back out of that game? What's going on there, NBC? Hey, but be sure not to.
They only flex. I'm sorry, they only flex out of the referees.
That's right, and Pete Morelli's crew reassigned to the New England-Philadelphia game as a punitive action, so not good there for the referees. Not good when you know the referee's name, quite frankly. All right, so, hey, we got to get out of here. You've been listening to Suits and Laterals. You can find our show at suitsandlaterals.com. We're part of the Four Lights FM podcast network. You can get us on iTunes and wherever you get your podcasts via RSS feed. I'm Jeff Rich. You can find me on Twitter at @byjeffrich. He's Chris Green at CGRN731. Hey, Chris, do you have a parting shot before we wrap this thing up?
So the only thing I have to say at this point is, how can the Browns lose in dramatic fashion against the Bengals this week?
Oh, I don't even care at this point. That's officially my parting shot. So for Chris Green, I'm Jeff Rich. You've been listening to Suits and Laterals. Have a good week, everyone.